Welcome back. If it has joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Women take to the streets of Makurdi, the Benue State capital, to demand full implementation of open grazing prohibition law, as one person is feared killed a day after the act came into effect. President Buhari requests to lay the 2018 budget before the National Assembly next Tuesday. Lawmakers in the House of Representatives kick against the proposal. Our big story tonight looks at the state of Nigeria's sporting infrastructure, with special focus on federal stadia spread across the country. Judge remands 8 former Catalan ministers in custody over the region's push for independence. For more on our top stories and others, please visit our websites, channelstv.com and youtube.com/channelsweb. You can also watch us on the go on a mobile device. Log on to m.channelstv.com or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. The Channels TV and Channels 24 app will give you access to news and updates. You also have the Eyewitness feature, so you can share those pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu and follow the instructions. And here are a few of the pictures that you sent into our Eyewitness portal today. We begin with this picture from Warri in Delta State, showing an area polluted by the operations of a refinery. Our Eyewitness reporter says this is not healthy for residents. He's asking the government to do something about it. This next photo is from Mowo Kekere community in the Ikorodu area of Lagos. According to our Eyewitness reporter, there's been a total blackout for some time now. He's asking the responsible agency to intervene. Our bus stops here in Asaba Onisha Road in Delta State. We see a gridlock. Eyewitness reporter laments the traffic jam, which according to him has become a common sight on this road, and pleads for lasting solution. Please keep the pictures and the videos coming. The police in Kogi State have confirmed the assassination of Labour leader Abdulmumini Yakubu by gunmen. Mr. Yakubu, who was the chairman of Non-Academic Staff Union of Secondary Schools at the Science and Technology and Technical Education Board branch, was murdered last night at his residence in Okene. Police Public Relations Officer Williams Ayas says Yakubu was killed along with a friend while observing Maghrib prayers in his house. Mr. Yakubu's assassination is happening amidst ongoing negotiations between Labour and government on the strike embarked upon by Kogi State civil servants. More of the news at 10 now from Ibrahim Adra, who is in Abuja. Hi, Ibrahim.
Hello, Amarachi. Thank you for joining us here in Abuja. Now, the last is yet to be heard about the fraud allegations against the former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Babachir Lawal, as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, is set to probe for the alleged crime. Sources in the FCC told Channels Television that the crack team made up of special investigators has been set up by the agency, and they are expected to examine all the details relating to the 200 million naira contract for the cutting of grass in the northeast. Mr. Babachir Lawal is accused of impropriety in the award of the contract, and the investigation by the EFCC is coming days after President Buhari announced his sack. The former SGF was first suspended by the president in April and later sacked on Monday after a panel set up to investigate the allegation, headed by the vice president, submitted the report of its finding to the president. And still talking about probes, the House of Representatives is not ready to back down yet on its investigation of the management of the State House Clinic in Abuja. The ad hoc committee of the House has been questioning key officers involved in the management of the clinic, and today the permanent secretary of the State House, Mr. Jalal Arabi, appeared for questioning. He explains to the committee that the way the State House Medical Center is presently being managed makes it impossible to provide all the needs of its patients. The Minister of State for Health, Osage Hanire, also appeared before the committee, but informed the committee that the State House is not under the purview of his ministry.
It's over 3 weeks now when the wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, called for a probe into how the budget for the State House Medical Center is being utilized. Her concerns led to a motion on the matter being considered by the House of Representatives, and a committee was set up to investigate the matter. The ad hoc committee is commencing its investigation. Present are officials from the Ministry of Health, the Federal Capital Territory Administration, and the State House Medical Center. The chairman outlines the focus of the committee.
On the need to investigate the deplorable condition of the State House Clinic and the alleged reductions from salaries and allowances of the medical staff. This committee is set up to do just that.
The Minister of State for Health starts off with the ministry's position.
Very well. What we know about the State House Clinic so far is only what we hear from the news, what we read from the news, what we hear from the media.
This is also the position of officials of the Federal Capital Territory Administration. The permanent secretary of the State House, however, confirms that the medical center is under the management of the State House. He then gives a breakdown of the budgetary allocation and releases to the center.
Cumulative 2015 to 17 was 465,935,358 naira.
The medical center is, however, not without challenges, and he outlines some of them.
The medical center, being perceived as the president's clinic, is only provided for as such in the budget, discounting the huge number of other beneficiaries of the medical services. The foregoing, added to the fact that all services are rendered free to all patients, including their spouses, children, and more often than not other dependents, makes it practically impossible to provide all the needs of the patients optimally within available resources.
The committee has called for some documents and details from officials of the Ministry of Health and the Federal Capital Territory Administration. The lawmakers say they will do everything within their power to complete their work and make their recommendations to the House as directed.
Meanwhile, the President has written to the House of Representatives asking to be granted leave to present the 2018 budget proposal to a joint session of the National Assembly on Tuesday, November the 7th. The President's request comes 2 days after the deadline proposed by the economic team for him to present the 2018 budget. The budget was to have been presented to the National Assembly on Tuesday, October the 31st, according to the timetable given by the Minister for Budget and National Planning.
Lawmakers in the House of Representatives settling down for the last plenary session of the week. The Speaker of the House begins with a letter from President Muhammadu Buhari to the National Assembly. The Speaker reads the letter.
I crave the kind indulgence of the National Assembly to grant me the slot of 14:00 hours on Tuesday, 7th November 2017 to formally address the joint session and lay before the National Assembly the 2018 budget proposal.
It is not well received by some lawmakers.
Constitutional right to say no, I wish, but unfortunately we don't have that. The Constitution is very clear. The President shall cause to be prepared and lay before the end of the financial year. So it's a constitutional duty imposed on the President. And this House, as the custodian of the Constitution, we have every duty to uphold the provision of the Constitution.
With that settled, lawmakers consider some motions. One of them calls for an investigation into the remittances of the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board, JAMB. According to the sponsor of the motion, news that the examination body remitted 8 billion naira to government in 2017 after years of remitting barely $500 million calls for a probe into the finances of the agency.
He has therefore observed that the total amount JAMB remitted to the Federation account between 2010 and 2016 is 50,752,488 naira, which is about 1% of the amount the agency remitted to the federal government in 2017 alone.
The motion scales through unanimously, and the House Committee on Basic Education and Services is to conduct an investigation into the matter. Meanwhile, in another motion, the House is urging the Minister of Finance and the Governor of the Central Bank to halt the planned movement of $35 million out of the World Bank-funded Growth and Employment Project. The sponsor of the motion says the planned movement is without the approval of the National Assembly.
Only 3 months into his appointment, the project coordinator of GEM has initiated the restructuring of the entire project and requesting for the release of the allegedly outstanding sum of $35 million from the Federal Ministry of Finance for the creation of a parallel SME investment fund.
The motion enjoys the support of most lawmakers. The House is asking that the Ministers of Finance and Industry, Trade and Investment discontinue any planned change to the project. A joint committee is also to investigate the project and report back in 4 weeks. Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
The immediate past president of Ghana, Mr. John Mahama, believes the African continent is better off operating a not-so-perfect democracy, which could get better than a high-risk dictatorship. Mr. Mahama wants African leaders to always put national interest above personal and foreign interest and embrace a collective position to develop the continent. He was the guest speaker at the graduation lecture of the Institute of Security Studies in Abuja. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafo, was there.
Development and security.
This is a gathering of security operators from the different law enforcement agencies in Nigeria in the company of a former president of Ghana, Mr. John Mahama, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama, and the Director General of the Department of State Services, Mr. Lawal Daura. They are at the graduation lecture of the Institute of Security Studies. The asymmetrical character of the threat profile and insecurity necessitates a more collective response to security management in Nigeria, and that's according to the Director General of the DSS.
The complexity and dynamism of the threat profile, with a multiplicity of cross-cutting issues, necessitated greater collaboration and pooling of resources among security and strategic agencies to ensure effective and efficient management of existing and emerging threats.
Speaking on the challenges of governance and development in Africa, a former president of Ghana, Mr. John Mahama, had this to say about governance on the continent.
For the safeguarding of rights and freedoms, for the protection of the public purse, and the general reduction in the number of insurrections, Africa is better off operating an imperfect but highly effective leadership structure of democracy than to accept the high risk of dictatorial rule.
He also had a word of advice for African leaders on how to develop the continent.
For a long time, foreign interests have largely succeeded because many African countries have not been able to entrench their national interests within their democratic institutions. They have succeeded because the quest for power often trumps the safeguarding of our national interests. I therefore propose that African leaders must make efforts to define their own national interests and ensure that, just like the Western countries, we take collective and entrenched positions that do not vary irrespective of who is at the helm of affairs.
The consensus at this event is that strategic and selfless leadership on the continent is key to its development. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
Many thanks indeed, Amaka. When the news at 10 returns, Lagos tops 36 states of the Federation in first subnational competitiveness index ranking by the National Competitiveness Council of Nigeria. That's now business news. Stay with Channels Television.